Thank you, sir. I think that was quite an engaging discussion. You definitely captured all the key points that you wanted to discuss and we wanted to learn very, very nicely, very crisply. We all were quite attentive, I think, because you had us hook to each and every word of yours. So we would be expecting a lot of questions very soon. The audience, I would like to reinforce the fact that you can use the chat box as well as the activity section of the Google Meet to post your questions, and I'm sure Mr. Gilmour over here would be very happy to, entertain us with the answers. I'm sure we can use a lot of expertise that he has. We have this opportunity today. So, meanwhile, there is just a lot of feedback that, if you see the chat box, there are a lot of feedback for your session. So, definitely, people have agreed with you on the fact that creation of the positive environment is a very important factor. That is one. Somebody has also understood the fact that this is not only a very student-centric discussion that we are having. This is something that could benefit a lot of different kinds of teaching methods or different kinds of teachers as well, and give them a chance to excel in a way that they can. And yes, and we actually have the principal of RIS who look forward to connecting with you and hope that she can share her expertise with her school as well. And for all our audience, we'll be sharing Mr. Gilmour's details in the chat box toward the end of the session. You can take it from there, and as he said, definitely it'll be a great way of connecting between him as well as our educators in India. I'm sure it will be a mutually positive exchange on all fronts. So we can now begin with the questions. If anybody has, you can post your questions over here. While we wait for the questions, okay, yes, we do have Silva Salvage who's asking, do you think that the students can have ownership of 100% of their time and choose 100% of their subjects?
Thanks so much. That's a really good question. And no, I don't. I think student ownership is critical, but I don't feel that there can be 100% ownership of everything. I think there are components where explicit teaching is critical, where teachers teach the students. But I think if we prioritize ownership at certain levels throughout our academic program, I think that meets the need that we have to. I think if we allow complete ownership, which in theory sounds fantastic, in reality, I think it could be very loose and all over the show. So we need to be strategic with how we place student ownership. And absolutely be intentional about including it and prioritizing it so that it leads to the positive result that we're wanting to achieve, as opposed to just saying, hey, we have student ownership and students lead and do everything. So I think it's understanding your context as well, which is so important.
Thank you, sir. So we have Meera Subramaniam who's asking, how do you train your teachers?
How do we train our teachers? Wow, that's a great question. How long you got? I think we are very fortunate in Singapore as an international school because we have exceptionally qualified educators applying to work for us. And so in one way, we're very fortunate. But with that said, we can't rely purely on teachers' experiences elsewhere. So we have to bring teachers up to speed, not necessarily with the basics of teaching and learning, but we have to bring them up to speed with what our culture is, how we operate at our school. What does mathematics look like in our school? What does inquiry look like in our school? So that we have a level of consistency. And this is one of the challenges we faced in our first few years, because we had these fantastic educators from all over the world, highly qualified, but everyone brought with them a different perspective. And so we had to find out, right, that's what happens in Japan or in the US or India or Australia. That's fantastic. But what does it mean for us here? So that's really, really important. And so we currently, what we'll do, we'll dedicate time. Obviously, COVID makes it challenging, but before COVID, we would dedicate time, regular time to meet with staff, to train staff, run internal professional development workshops on all aspects of our curriculum, on teaching and learning. We would have a focus each year that I spoke about. 2 years ago was teaching and learning. Last year it was assessment. This year it's differentiation. So all of our professional development, our collaborative planning meetings, all of those will have an aspect of differentiation, and we'll talk about that. We'll unpack that a little bit. And so there's ongoing professional development for educators at all times.
Thank you, sir. So Rachna Joshi is asking, could you share some specific tools or resources for building a positive school culture? I have a suggestion for this, if you may allow. The Power of Rapport by yours truly, this esteemed speaker today, is definitely a very, very thought-provoking read. I will definitely recommend it. But then, yes, I'm sure, sir, you would also have some more suggestions to add to that list.
Yeah, well, thanks. I've got a copy of the book here, which I want to show you. So the way I've written the book, actually, it's a practical guide. So, it gives you 6 practical things that you can do to develop your skill in building rapport. Because I believe building rapport is a skill that you acquire, that you work on. It's not something that just happens miraculously. You have to be dedicated and intentional about building it. So to answer your question, what are some practical things that we can do? I think, like I said before, I definitely have the belief that human beings are designed to connect with each other. But often the environment that we find ourselves in is not conducive for that. So when we as an organization realized that was our issue, we actually just pulled the handbrake up and we said, we've got to review what we are doing. So we dedicated time every week where we would have a staff meeting. We threw the staff meeting out the way. We communicated what we had to communicate. We did it by email. And so we had a good half an hour, 45 minutes with teachers every single week where we could do activities and learning engagements with them, all focused on building connection. So it could be something as simple as just getting people to share, what do they do on the weekends? What are they passionate about? What is their background? And that helps teachers identify commonalities between one another. And commonalities are the foundation of building positive rapport, right? If I, speak to you, I'm sure that we can find a similarity or commonality. And that gives us an immediate connection because we have the same experience. And so then we can build upon that. So we just have to get our teachers together. So I would say, as a takeaway for you, I would say look for time where you can prioritize it. So something's going to have to be taken away, where you can get teachers to connect with each other. And then skillfully facilitate that time. We did it. We put up big sheets of paper around the room. We played some music. We said, right, you got 1 minute to go answer all these questions. The questions range from, what's your favorite sport team? Where did you grow up? What university did you go to? What's your favorite pop song? Anything. It's just going to break the mold a little bit and have people connect as human beings with one another. We really realized as well that while we had passionate educators, we knew nothing about one another. The person, in the office next to me, I knew nothing about that person. I didn't know anything about what's happening in his personal life. And so we had to take time to understand one another as human beings first. And then we became educators.
Thank you for the sneak peek into the book. All right, so we have the principal of RRIS who's asking, does the voice, choice, and ownership aspect make it a democratic way of schooling? And if no, then what differentiates it from the democratic way of schooling?
Well, I think that's interesting you call it a democratic way of schooling, because I think there's definite pros and cons to that, right? I think we never want to have an autocratic schooling system or a teacher-centric model where it is purely dictated by the teacher. But I think if we flip that, we do not want to have a completely student-driven school. There has to be a balance between the two. As I spoke about earlier, there is still an absolute need for explicit teaching. That is a requirement. I think that is something which goes down to the very heart of an educator, the skill of being able to teach a certain subject. So we have to find that balance. And I think, yes, we want student ownership across our school. Does everything have to have student ownership? No, it doesn't. But I think key things, particularly the curriculum and teaching and learning, there has to be a level of engagement with our students. Now, I suppose if I look about my role as a school leader, I'm going to consult the students on many things. I'm going to consult the staff on many things because I want their input. I want their engagement. But at the end of the day, I have to make the decision. And if something goes wrong, it's on me and it's not on everyone else. So ultimately, I have to make the tough decision, which sometimes goes against what everyone is saying. And that's okay, because I, as a leader, am still responsible for the direction of the school. But the engagement process is the key. And I think when we're clear with our students or staff, for that matter, about the process of engagement that says, yes, I want to hear your voice, I want to hear your ideas. 9 times out of 10, we're going to do these things collaboratively. But you know what, there might be that one thing that I'm just going to have to make a decision on, and we're going to go with that, because either that's something I really believe in, or there's external pressure from a board of directors or owners that perhaps the teachers don't always see, and that you have to consider. So I think it's a much bigger topic for a 5-minute conversation, but I think finding the balance is absolutely key.
Thank you, sir. So Meera Subramaniam has a question. She, of course, thanks you for the time and experience that you are sharing with us. And she's also asking, do you also engage people from other countries for your teachers' professional development?
We do, yeah, absolutely. You know, we actually currently running 2 online professional development workshops. One on approaches to teaching and learning, so those transdisciplinary or transferable skills I spoke about, and the other one is on teaching and learning and leading effective teaching and learning. And both of those online workshops are being facilitated by facilitators in Australia. So absolutely, we believe we're an international school. We have families, faculty members from all over the world, and we want to tap into the experience and expertise that people have around the world. Pre-COVID times, we would send staff members away within the region to receive professional development, but then come back and then spread that learning and that knowledge among our staff. Now it's obviously a bit more challenging, but you know what, platforms like this, platforms, various different online learning platforms, I think we've learned in COVID, they are as effective and they're a lot cheaper than sending someone, for a couple of days to a different country. So I think moving forward, professional development is going to look very different. I think, business is going to look very different as well. And we've learned during this time that we can actually do so much online through platforms just like this. But yeah, to answer your question, we absolutely look beyond Singapore. Singapore is fantastic. There's amazing educational resources here, but we always, extend the borders and the boundaries to seek out what's best.
Absolutely. The best way to expand your education or your knowledge base is by sharing it. And I think that works in all directions. So we have Pooja Singh who's asking, how do you bring on board those teachers who have a different ideology than yours?
Sorry, could you just repeat that first part of the question?
Yes. So Pooja Singh is asking, how do you bring on board those teachers who have a different ideology compared to yours?
That's a very good question. And I think I'm still learning the answer on that one. So when it comes to people with a different ideology, I think as an organization, as a leader, you have to be very clear. What is your belief? Because you have to be unwavering in what your vision and mission is for the organization that you're leading. Now, with that said, it's very hard because you can't be an absolute dictator and only have people who agree with you. You have to identify commonalities in people. And while they might see the world slightly differently, while they might approach education in a slightly different way, as long as those fundamentals you agree on, then that's okay. I actually believe, disagreeing in a constructive manner is a fantastic sign of a successful team. If you're able to have different perspectives and really challenge one another, yet still be constructive in how you communicate, that for me is signs of a mature team, a mature leadership team, a mature educator. If everyone just agrees and says yes, you're going to operate with one perspective and it'll be very one-dimensional. So welcoming different perspectives is important. We have to do that. Every human being's different, and we have to have the approach that we can always learn from people, and that's definitely something that I've learned, that people from very different contexts have taught me often the most things, because I see things in a certain way. But if I'm open to hearing what other people are saying, then obviously I grow as a leader. But what I would do for you, I would look down and drill down on what are those absolute non-negotiables for you. those non-negotiables that simply have to happen, that we all have to agree on these things, right? And if someone is not on board with those things, then I think you have to have the conversation with them that perhaps is not the organization for them to work in. And that's a tough decision and a very tough thing to do. But ultimately, if you have people, passengers on the train, if we use that, who are not fully bought into the mission and direction that you are taking your organization, then that's ultimately going to slow you down in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Oh, that's a quite an interesting take on it, and thank you. I think that is very important. Like how you said, sometimes agreeing to disagreeing and then moving forward with it, working on a win-win solution for not only the parties involved is very important, because here we are talking about people who are actually influencing young minds. Hence, that win-win perspective is very, very important. Dear participants, you have your fellow co-learners of the session also posting certain experiences in the chat box. You can go through that as well. We do have time for, I think, a few more questions. So if anybody is interested, you can post it right here. Meanwhile, I have a question of my own, sir, if you will allow it.
Of course.
Yes. So I was wondering that, you had quite a flourishing corporate, you were quite flourishing as a corporate professional, but then you shifted to education. And that too, if I say, you're not in the conventionally thought of educational field, like of a direct classroom teacher. You are somebody who is into teacher training, you're somebody who's into student interaction, so many aspects. What was the key turning point for you, or let's say, how did you find your calling that you knew that, okay, this is the direction you should be taking?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And understanding your calling or why we do what we do is so important. So, when I was at school, I grew up in a challenging environment in my home situation. And that led to me not really being fully engaged at school. I enjoyed the sports component at school, but there were many aspects of school that I really didn't engage with. And because of that, I really struggled academically. Until one of my educators in high school took an interest in me, and he really invested into me. He motivated me, inspired me, and encouraged me that I can achieve everything I want to achieve if I work hard and I chase after things. And that has really stuck with me. And I think I knew there and then that I wanted to do that same level of motivation for other people. And I didn't quite know when I finished school, I didn't quite know what the avenue was going to be. So I went through and I got a degree in sports science. And then obviously, I led an organization within South Africa, a sports organization. But I always knew that I had a passion for education, a passion for people, because of this influence that this one teacher had on my life. And there were a series of events that took place that led me to a fantastic opportunity to lead in a school in South Africa, which I took. And as I did that and began working in that school, I just knew this is my calling, and I've never looked back since. Now I think there's many things we can learn. There's many things we can grow. I think the education field, the more we can interact with the corporate world, with other aspects of business, of innovation, of science, the more we're going to grow, and the better product we're going to offer for our students. So I'm big. I've obviously had a foot in both worlds, and so I definitely want to try and bridge that. And I encourage educators or leaders on this platform who have maybe only been within education to see how they can gain experience, perhaps not even full-time, but some experience in the corporate world, because it will benefit absolutely your work in education. And I think we need it. There's many things we can learn from the business world and the corporate world, especially around expectations and achieving KPIs that sometimes we find a little bit loose in education.
Thank you for sharing that snapshot of your journey with us. So, dear audience, we have time for one last question while you can present it. I do have the speaker's email ID with me. As discussed, it would definitely be a very good experience for me if I have the educators across not only Singapore and India, but globally, all the educators connecting and sharing whatever they can share, because I think that is how we have to grow. There's no option over there. So the speaker's email ID, you can note it down, it's there in the chat box as well. I'll read it out for everybody's information and convenience. That is M for Mike, that is M dot Gilmour, that is GILMOUR at gwa.edu.sg. It will definitely be a great experience for everybody to share whatever they know. I think this is a platform for learning, and no technology nor classroom wall should hold as a boundary or a border for any learning that could ever happen. So I think if we have no further questions, we can end the session today. It has definitely been quite an insightful experience for a lot of us, because I think the take you presented in terms of teacher training and classroom experience and growing, it has actually transcended the boundaries of, let's say, what a conventional school is imagined like. So that is very, very important. Like you have mentioned in your book as well, that this is something that is more personal rather than just a professional endeavor, and definitely the need of the hour. I mean, if I think one of the most important definitions that we were taught as a child is that man is a social human, a social animal. So the word social is what actually separates us, and that is exactly what you have helped us understand, explore, and hopefully apply as well in times to come. Thank you so much, Mr. Gilmour. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you so much. Well, look, it's been a real privilege for me to be part of this. I really do appreciate the time that everyone's given up to listen. I really hope that it's been beneficial. And as you've heard, please do reach out, whether that's on my email or on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect and love to keep learning and growing with you. So thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Pleasure was ours as well. Thank you, dear audience, for having such an invigorating conversation today. We look forward to your participation tomorrow again at 5 o'clock in the evening. Have a great day.